Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for our special edition webinar, Delivering Virtual Mini Assessments. We're going to give folks just 1 or 2 minutes to get logged on, make sure their audio is working. But in the meantime, I wanted everyone to introduce themselves via the group chat. We're expecting a big audience tonight, but we don't want it to feel big. We want it to feel like we're all in one room together, learning together. So if you don't mind, try and find that group chat widget. It's that blue box that has the 2 speech bubbles in it, and we'll be using that tonight to talk to one another. So that will be how you connect with the fellow educators who are on the call with you tonight, share ideas. So if you can go ahead and start practicing using that group chat by introducing yourself, where you're from, what grades you teach, and what subject. And then we'll get started in just a minute or 2 more. All right, I'm going to get us started because we have a lot of really great content to cover tonight. So if you're just joining us, go ahead and introduce yourself in the group chat. That's that blue box with the 2 speech bubbles, and we'll be using that to talk to one another tonight with the other educators who are on the call. So go ahead and introduce yourself, say your name, where you're from, and what grade and subject you teach. So if you have joined us for past webinars, you will notice that this webinar has a bit of a different look to it, and that's because we're really lucky tonight to be joined by our colleagues from Edcite, which is a free digital platform for educators to design and deliver assignments, and which I think is particularly relevant right now. So we're so glad to have them and to be doing this webinar in partnership with them. Before we get started, I wanted to help you familiarize yourself with some of the features of this webinar platform if this is your first time joining us. So the Q&A box is that purple box that has Q&A on it, and is where you can ask questions directly of us, the presenters. So if you have tech help, or if you are watching the presentation and you have a specific question about something the presenter has said, you can put your questions in that purple Q&A box. We're lucky tonight to be better staffed than we are normally, so someone will be monitoring that Q&A box at all times and try and get to as many of those questions in real time as we can. And then for all the other questions, hopefully we'll get to as many as we can at the end of the presentation. And then we'll also be showing a lot of different resources tonight. And you'll find all of those resources in the green resources widget. So that's that green box with a little piece of paper on it. So everything we share tonight, whether it's a resource or a URL to a resource, those will all be there. After the webinar, we will email the recording to you. So don't worry about if you miss a note or you haven't caught something. You'll have full access to both the slide deck, which you actually already do have access to the slide deck in your resource widget. And then after the webinar is completed, you'll also get the recording. And then you will have the ability to earn a certificate for 1 hour of professional learning. So after this webinar airs, we'll allow 2 weeks to pass, and then we'll send you a survey. We're interested in what you thought of the webinar and whether you've had a chance to use anything that you've learned. And completing that survey will generate a certificate for your 1 hour of professional learning credit. Lastly, we encourage you to share what you're learning tonight with your audience on Twitter. So if you're active on Twitter, if you can use the hashtags, hashtag RemoteLearning and hashtag CoreAdvocates to share all the things that you're learning that you think would be applicable to your network. So we have 2 main goals for tonight. One is to learn to send the Achieve the Core mini assessments to students both virtually and in printed form when needed. And then to learn how to use the Edcite platform to build standards-aligned assignments and formative assessments for students. Our roadmap for tonight is on the right-hand side. So in a minute, we'll do some quick introductions, and then we'll have an overview of remote learning. We'll talk then specifically about the Achieve the Core mini assessments and what those entail. And then we'll do a deep dive into Edcite, and you'll learn all the different features of this free platform for educators. And then hopefully we'll have time for any questions that we weren't able to answer in real time. So some quick introductions. My name is Claire Rivero. I'm the Digital Strategy Manager at Achieve the Core. And then I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues from Edcite who are co-hosting with me tonight. Brian, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Brian McIntosh, and I work as the product manager at Edcite. So I work with teachers, administrators, and students and our engineers to build new features in the product. I'll be answering your questions. Great to see everybody.
Great. And I'm Julia Sweeney. I taught middle school ELA and social studies, and I get to work with schools and districts across the country and internationally using Edcite and Edcite schools. So Edcite, as Claire mentioned, is a free platform for teachers to send digital assignments. So we're looking forward to digging in to how to use that. So let's dive right in. So to start, we just want to say thank you to everyone who's tuning in right now and to all of your teams and colleagues for everything that you're doing. We just want to start by recognizing that these are really trying times, and we see how much of an impact educators are having on the safety and continued academic engagement of all of our students. So thanks for everything you're doing. We hope that all of you are safe and doing well physically and mentally. So keep up the great work, and thanks. So remote learning. We usually like to start with why, but I think that everyone joining this webinar knows why we're talking about remote learning. Right now, there is a huge push to have content delivered to students at home, and there's a lot of uncertainty as to how long this is going to be happening. And so when we're talking about remote learning, there's the need to respond quickly, but there's also the need to think about the impact of how we're rolling this out. So we want to talk specifically about how this can sometimes be logistically challenging and the impact it can have on education inequality if not intentionally addressed. And when we dive into both of those areas, we're thinking about access to digital materials versus printed materials. We're looking at not just do students have a device, but are we using equal devices? You know, typing a 5-paragraph essay on a phone is not equal to typing a 5-paragraph essay on a laptop. And so just making sure that as we're moving to things very quickly because we need to, that we're just being cognizant of some of the impacts on our students and their access. And we're also just going to touch upon making sure that you're structuring content and delivering that content in a way that's meeting all of your students' needs. So instead of spending all of our time in the abstract, though, about, okay, well, how should we structure it? What should be blended? We wanted to ground ourselves with an example of a district that is doing a really phenomenal job at planning ahead and being very intentional. So Hoboken Public Schools in New Jersey, they're a team that we work with at Edcite, and I've been connecting with them during this transition to remote learning. And so they've shared a lot about what they've been doing, and they said I could share it with all of you. So they started with a survey. When it became clear that schools were going to be going remote, let's keep going. Sorry. When it became clear that schools were going to be going remote, they gave a survey to their students, and they asked 3 questions. They asked, do you have access to Wi-Fi? Do you have a laptop or desktop computer? And do you have cable television? And so right now, we're hearing from a lot of teams that they don't know those things yet. And so this was a great first step that the district took just to assess where are we, who has what. And from there, they went into a 2-pronged approach. Is everyone able to hear us okay? I'm noticing some of the group chats saying, can't hear everything.
Yeah,
All good on your guys'
I think most people can hear. I just want to give one recommendation, which is that sometimes folks have trouble with the web audio. So if you are having trouble playing the audio through the webinar, please try dialing in. That should do the trick. Or if that doesn't work, just go ahead and log in. Try logging out and logging in again. Thanks so much.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for the sea of yeses in the group chat. That was great. Okay, so we're talking about how they then took this information from the survey and implemented a two-pronged approach. So the two things they needed to do was to immediately respond academically and give students content. And so they had to make sure they had paper products and paper packets for students that didn't have the access, and they made digital versions for students that did have access. And while they were delivering that content, they began addressing the gaps. So during this last week and continued next week, they are in the process of ordering and delivering 100 jetpacks for internet and Chromebooks to the students that have shared that they do not have access. And so this middle column here is where I think most teams are going to be spending their time right now. But we know that not every kid has access. So we have to meet them where they are, and we have to get them to where we want them to be moving forward. And so that's where the next phase is once you're able to address those gaps, moving into digital instruction, and then focusing less on the logistics of making sure we have the devices and focusing more on content design, making sure that all of our students are learning. So I think that they have a great example, and Sandra Rodriguez from Hoboken Public Schools said that she is happy to share. So if anyone wants more information, you can get in touch with me. And I know they are very active on Twitter, so feel free to give them a shout out as well. Just looping back to logistics and equity, just things that you should check out. In terms of logistics, rostering and single sign-on when you are doing virtual is a key aspect. And so a lot of teams are using Google Classroom. That is a huge win if you've got Google Classroom already set up. If you've got Clever, that is also really helpful. There's Canvas, there's so many where you can have those rosters already set up and easily push information to students. Additional free resources from those. Clever has a great integration going with Zoom right now. So if you're starting to think down the road about giving virtual instruction via video, you've got that Zoom option, you've got Google Hangouts. And, in terms of increasing access, we have been seeing a lot from local internet companies about being able to provide free access to students right now. So definitely look up whichever internet companies are most active or have the best coverage in your area. I would definitely look into them as options for getting students online. So we're talking about the rostering, we're talking about the logistics, and we're just always remembering that we need to make sure we're bridging that gap to keep equity in mind. So when we're talking about this middle section of bridging that gap, we need ready-to-use materials in both paper and digital. And that's why this partnership with Achieve the Core is really positive. So I want to turn it back over to Claire to talk more about Achieve the Core, what they're producing for teams, and then we can talk about the virtual afterwards.
Thanks, Julia. So before I launch into my section, I saw a question in the Q&A about what jetpacks are. So I think that there might have been a little not clear in the audio. So a jetpack is a way to virtually have internet. So if the student doesn't have wired internet at home, it's essentially sort of like the internet that you would get on your cell phone, but it's just sort of a virtual internet like a little small box. I don't know if, Julia, you have a better way of explaining what a jetpack is.
No, that's exactly it. So the jetpack is the internet access, and then the Chromebook is the device. And so it doesn't have to be a jetpack. It might be, something from Verizon, or, there's a lot of different ones out there that are hotspots or things that you can send home with kids for internet. Great question came in about the infrastructure They weren't necessarily talking about well, they're talking about infrastructure for internet, but in terms of deploying these devices out, what the Hoboken team is doing is using the sites that they already have set up for free and reduced lunch, the food delivery to students. They're using that as the same spot to then deliver the technology and make sure students are able to get online.
Wonderful. So keep those questions coming. We'll continue to try and answer them live in the Q&A box. And then if we want to answer them verbally live for everybody, we'll try and jump in with as many of those as we can as well. So transitioning to focus mainly, this little section will focus mainly on the Achieve the Core mini assessments. So for those of you who aren't familiar, Achieve the Core is a website. We have entirely free resources, classroom facing and professional learning. So we invite you to go check out the website and explore if you haven't yet. And tonight we'll be talking specifically about mini assessments. So we have a collection of more than 80 formative assessments for math and ELA, and that includes assessments that are specifically about language and grammar conventions. All of our assessments are grade specific and standards aligned. They're designed to be completed in one 45-minute class period, and they reflect the shifts for college and career-ready instruction. And I want to pause here to address a question that I've heard a lot in the last couple of days about whether assessments can really be done authentically virtually. There have been concerns about, well, won't parents just do the assignment for them? How can we tell it's the student themselves who's not just sort of Googling the answer? And Achieve the Core mini assessments are really designed to have students show their work. So we try to guard against, a student being able to just put in an equation and then plug in the answer and then getting a correct answer that way. They really do need to show their work, whether they're doing the paper and pencil version or the digital version. And Julian, I think you had some ideas too about how we can hold students accountable specifically with digital versions.
Yeah, I mean, definitely showing work. If it's something that they can't Google, you're already guaranteed that it's going to be showing what they know. In terms of making sure students aren't able to open other tabs or do different things, a lot of times you can push out to Chromebooks a kiosk mode. Now, with that said, there's different things. They could just pull out a phone. So, I mean, at the end of the day, we're not going to be able to lock down everything. But I think the key is in designing content that isn't always just super Googleable. And I'm going to show you guys the live progress on Edcite. So if it is a virtual assessment that they're giving, that you can also be monitoring. And there's different things you can look at in the student history. Actually, Claire, I mentioned this to you that sometimes people have gone into the history of an assignment to see hey, how long was the student working on this? They'll see at 2:52, there was nothing written, and at 2:52 and 15 seconds, there was a 5-paragraph essay. And so if you think that someone didn't write their essay or something, you've got a lot of information that you can always dive into to prevent those things. Keep it secure.
Great, thanks so much. So talking about technology, I'm getting a signal here that I have unstable internet. So Julie, if you see me, I'm going to advance my slide. If you don't see it advancing, if you can just advance it for me. But luckily I'm on phone audio, so hopefully I'll continue being able to present. So I want to talk first about ELA literacy mini assessments and what exactly are included with those assessments. So we have, when you download a mini assessment or you access it virtually on Edcite, you'll get the passage or information about where you can access the text. And so if it's the full-length book, it'll tell you the passage, the page, and the passage to direct students to. Then you'll also get text-dependent questions. And then for teachers, there'll be an answer key and a distractor analysis. So you'll not only get an answer key that will help you grade, but there'll also be the explanation for you about why certain answers are right or wrong and what that might mean for instruction or remediation. And then there's also included guidance for English language learners and accommodations that you can make for them to ensure that they're able to access this assessment as well. So then moving on to the next slide, I want to talk specifically about our grammar and language convention assessments, and excuse my lack of closed parenthetical. I saw that today when I was looking through the slides. I'm like, actually, I'm going to go with this is an example of what these assessments look like, because the way these assessments assess grammar is through embedded error passages. So you'll receive, for these types of assessments, you'll get a text passage, and they will have embedded errors within it, and students need to identify those errors. These are designed to assess mastery of language convention skills. Again, they're grade specific and standards aligned, and they include the text and the answer keys. So now talking about the math mini assessments, again, you'll get grade and standard specific items. You'll get a very detailed overview, which is teacher facing, about why these specific items address the standards and how they support student learning. You'll get an answer key and model potential solutions. So like I was saying earlier, all of the math assessments are designed to have students show their work, not just give the correct answer. So you'll also get included in that answer key what one of the potential solution methods might look like. And then lastly, there is guidance for English language learners. In math assessments in particular, it's important that we don't let language be a barrier to English language learners, showing us what they know about the mathematics. So there is some guidance on scaffolds you can do to make sure that students can access and show you what they know with the math. So the reason this webinar is a special edition webinar tonight is that most of our mini assessments are available digitally on Edcite now, which maybe a lot of folks didn't know. So you can access the assessments via PDF print version, as you always have from the Achieve the Core website. And then also from the Achieve the Core website, there will be a button that will link you to the digital version, which we'll be digging into in just a minute. And then I wanted to highlight some work that our core advocates have done to design assessments via Edcite. If you're not familiar with our Core Advocate Network, that's our free network for educators. If you're not a member, there's a link that you in your resource widget where you can join this network. And it's basically focused around giving educators a lot of opportunities like this one for professional learning, professional development. And this is an example of such an opportunity. So these 4 teachers took a training actually with Brian, who is on tonight, to learn how to design assignments and assessments on Edcite, and then they each designed one, and they're now featured on Edcite, and they are included tonight in your resource widget if any of these grade bands or topics looks interesting to you. Lastly, if you want to learn more about mini assessments, we have a couple of blog posts on our blog Aligned that help you understand the different uses for mini assessments, and they're also included tonight in your green resource widget. And so now I'm going to pass it back to Julia to really dig into Edcite and that functionality and how it can support you.
Okay, great. So now that we've talked about where you can go to find those mini assessments and you can print when necessary, let's talk about how you get the digital version pushed out to your students. So from the Achieve the Core website, when you click on an assignment, it's going to bring you to what we call the student preview. So you can take a look at what it looks like on Edcite. And then in the top right corner, as you're going through as a student, you're going to see a sign up for free or a log in if you already have an account, where you just create the account there and it is automatically bringing that mini assessment into your account. So again, from Achieve the Core's website, when you're clicking on the mini assessment digital version, you then click sign up for free or log in, and it brings it straight in. Then we need to talk about how do I make sure my students see this. So from your home page, you will see a green button that says assign. We try to keep our buttons and lingo consistent, so you will usually see that green button in an assign box. So I can push this out to my Google Classroom if I have it, or I can push this out to classes that I have manually uploaded. If, let's say, I don't have a class set up yet and I just want to give this a try, I am also able to send this as a link to my students so they can just get in there and use it as a guest. It's still going to send you the data, but they aren't actually saving it to any specific student account. Best practice is to bring in your class, so bring in your Google Classroom or create a class yourself. And you can have students, logging in with Microsoft if you are a Microsoft district. So best practice is to definitely assign it to your classes, but you're able to assign with a link if you'd like. So once you send it to students, this is what I mentioned earlier in terms of live progress. Once students have it, you get to see which question they're on and how they're doing on that question. So you've got real-time data coming in. So from your Edcite account, you can always go to your reports where you can see the live progress. You can kind of see in this GIF, we've got the green circles. That's indicating that they are answering that question correctly. The red circle indicates that they are under a 50% on that one. And then you can see which questions they are on. You figure you follow that through, and if I notice that one student is on question number 1 while I'm doing this remote learning, and we've been working on this for 30 minutes of the block, I'm going to send them a direct message and say, hey, what's going on? I want to make sure you're still getting through this work with the rest of the team. Or maybe if I notice someone is flying through this assignment and it's nothing but red bubbles, I'm going to send them a message and just say, hey, I want you to go back. I want you to check your work and slow down. So the live progress can be a hugely helpful tool for your toolbox. Once your students have actually submitted, that's when you get into the grading. Anything that can be auto-graded is auto-graded, and anything that requires teacher grading, so something that is more open response, a drawing-based question, something that is more subjective, we're going to highlight in yellow what you need to grade. So it's really clear to you what you need to do. So I can go in there and I can say, yep, this is a 1, and I can score through it. And to make it easier for teams in doing that grading, you can choose to grade by student or grade by question. So I taught ELA, and I prefer to grade by question because I get into this mindset of this is a really good answer, and I grade everyone's question number 1. You're also able to add rubrics, so you can pull up a rubric and actually score an essay or a written response on that rubric. So again, this is right after the live progress. So you monitor the students in real time, then you move into that grading tab. And both of these live in your reports section of Edcite. So then let's say they've done the assessment, you've graded it. Now you want to get into the data. The summary report is that third tab available to you in the report section. At the top, you've got a visual showing you question by question data, standards data, and at the bottom, you're going to see a table view where you can view that data by aggregate, by question, by standard, and you can have it in percent or points. And let's say I want to look at the average across my classes. If I've got 3 classes in here, I can see them each as one row. Or if I'm in individual students, I can click on that student's name to pull up their individual report. So one of the designs of this presentation is we put GIFs in here so you can see the same small action over and over again. So if you want to come back to these later afterwards, it's really easy to see what we were talking about. So again, on this GIF, you can see it's showing right now a list of all of the students and their performance. And then if I click on one of those students' names, that's where you get the individual students' report that you can print, access their backup history, and whatnot. So that is the data. So if you think about the process of, I want to use one of the Achieve the Core mini assessments virtually. We've gone through the steps here. I copy it from the Achieve the Core website. I assign it to my students. I monitor that live progress and intervene wherever I need to. I complete any grading, and then I respond to the data. And so that cycle can continue. But let's say I use all of the mini assessments from Achieve the Core. What else can I use from Edcite? So at this point, we're going to transition into all of the additional items that you can use on Edcite, since we're looking at needing more virtual content as this remote learning might be going on longer than originally anticipated. So let's talk about some Edcite basics. So you sign up for Edcite through the Achieve the Core mini assessment. When you log in, this is what your home screen will look like. You're going to have a header across the top so that those menus across the top of the screen. You've got your home button, which is always going to be there. You have assignments and questions. We consider those to be your content menus. You've got your reports, which is going to host all of your data. And then you've got the roster menu. And that's where you're going to do all of your class uploads, student imports. And then below that, you just have your home page, which has the most recent activity, whether it's activity you've sent to my classes or just recent assignments you've been working on. So the first thing you do once you get in there is import or create your classes. Like I said before, you can import from Clever, you can import from Google Classroom, and you can build your own. If I build my own, so I've made this demo class, I can have students join with a class code. So if I am a Microsoft district and my students have Microsoft emails, I can have them sign up for Edcite, use that single sign-on through Microsoft, and join my class that way. You're also able to just manually add students or do it via CSV. So this is an important first step so you can monitor progress over time for your students. So I highly recommend importing your classes or creating your classes as your first step. Then once you've got your rosters in there, it's time to start thinking about content. Now we know about the mini assessments. So let's talk about navigating Edcite for more content. Just a quick lingo check. On Edcite, we use the term questions to mean the individual items that students are going to answer. The assignments are the set of those questions that you actually send to students. And you'll notice that we use the word assignment and assessment interchangeably because in both forms, they are sets of questions. It's all in how you frame those sets of questions. And then the third category is collections. And collections are groupings of assignments for you to browse or schedule in bulk. And for today's webinar, I actually think that the collections is one of the most valuable places for us to start because a lot of the need right now is the ability to assign a large amount of content to students virtually. So on Edcite, the collections area lives under the assignments menu where you can find different groupings of assignments. So I pulled up this version of, or this collection, which is an Achieve the Core math collection. So different mini assessments from Achieve the Core. And when I pull up that collection, so I click on the box, it's going to pull up the list of assignments. And I can go in, I can assign one assignment at a time. So I click that green assign button. I push it out to my classes. Or I can bulk schedule all 35 of them. And I can say send one every single day and make them due a week later. Or make them due never, just have an open date on it. So just looking at that GIF again, you can assign it from a single assignment. And there's a couple demo accounts on here. Or I can schedule in bulk, saying I just want this sent Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, or all 5 days of the week, and then you push that out. So for teams that are looking to have just a baseline math, ELA, science, and social studies assignment, let's say we're planning ahead, we want to be prepared if necessary in April. We might say, okay, let's get 4 to 6 weeks of digital assignments put together in a collection. I'm going to share this collection with my colleagues, and we're going to just push them out to all of our students. So this would be a bulk scheduler that I think is really valuable considering a lot of the needs right now. But let's say we're not just talking about finding bulk content, the Costco of content. Let's say we want to find individual assignments. So the assignments library, these are also ready to go pieces of content. So they are packages of questions. There are assignments. I can go in here, I can search for a term, and I can filter. We were talking so much about Achieve the Core, but I gave an example of Eureka Math. Content is also on here, so I could search for Eureka Math, or I could search for slope. And if I find something I like, I can click that assign button and I can push it out. And to make sure I like it, you've got a preview button, so you can get a quick scroll of a print view. If you like it, assign it. And this is a cool thing about Edcite. Everything that you find, let's say you're looking at something, you like it, but you would word something differently. You would change it slightly. You can. Everything on Edcite is customizable. So when I find something that I like, whether I'm in the preview, whether I'm in the student preview, I can click on that customize button and make changes. So again, the assignments library, I can go, I can find content. I can assign it as is, absolutely, but I can also adjust it. So let's talk about if I find something that I want to modify. Customizing. Let's say I search for something on genetics and I want to change it. I can customize the assignment. That'll bring me to the assignment editor, where I can use the red trash can to delete questions. I can then use the blue pencil to edit questions. And we try to make it as easy as possible for you to make quick changes. So if I wanted to change the wording of this question to include please, I could go ahead and I could write that in there. I could also add an answer choice or add a part B to this question. So that is how you customize. Anything you find in that assignments library, you've always got the option to customize and adjust it to really meet the needs of your students. So this is the deep dive into the assignments library. But underneath assignments, we've got questions. So the questions bank allows you to search for individual pieces. So in the assignments library, I was showing you the search by key term. I was looking for Eureka Math, I was looking for slope, I was looking for genetics. In both the assignments library and the question bank, you can search by keyword. You can also search in both by standard. So I can go into the questions bank. I can select my standards. Let's say I'm looking for Ohio Math. I can drill into a particular standard and say, show me all of the questions in Edcite. And there are 200,000 items in Edcite. Show me all of the ones just tagged to this standard. And that filter in the top right to filter by state released items filters that down to just the most vetted content. Now, I know that state testing is the last thing on people's minds right now. So don't think of this so much as like, oh, I want to go find state test items. Think of it as this is really high quality, standards aligned content that has been vetted that I can leverage. And what's extra cool is that these are state test items from around the country. So we often hear from teams that they wish, oh, sorry, I saw a question come in, distracted. We often hear from teams that they wish they had more content from the state. And so when we looked at all of the different states putting out content, we said, well, what if teams from Ohio could more easily find some of the state test items from Florida or from Massachusetts? And so on the back end, Edcite maps all of the standards from state to state to make sure that we only show you a piece of content or a question if it's an exact match to your state's standard. So when I'm searching for an Ohio standard standard and I see content from other states, that's because it's an exact match to my Ohio standard. So definitely check out the question bank. Once I'm browsing through it, I can checkbox different items that I want to use to assemble an assignment. So again, drill down to those standards. It's the same process in the assignments library and in the question bank for that searching. I can then filter by state released items if I'd like. And then I can start to browse and find the content and check it if I want to use it. Okay, so that is a lot of content and that is a lot that you can work with. So if you are totally new to Edcite, start here. Start with the mini assessments, start with the collections, the assignments, the question bank, and pull from those and customize. For those of you that want to take another leap into some of the advanced parts of Edcite, we're going to do a quick overview of question creation, because as we are doing more remote learning, more virtual learning, you might want to build some of your own items. So let's talk about creating. So on Edcite, you create questions, you then package them as an assignment, and you push them to students. All questions that you create are going to live in your My Questions. I always say it's like on your computer when you're making a document, it lives in My Documents, or Google Drive, it lives in My Drive. So every question you create, you then find in My Questions. And there are a lot of question types that you can choose from when building. There are more than 60 types of questions on Edcite. And the reason we do that is so we can meet the needs of all grade levels and all subject areas. So if I am teaching early elementary school and I want to use a time-telling question where they are manipulating the hands of a clock, versus if I am having them graph quadratic functions. So making sure that we have question types that actually truly align to the skill we're teaching, as opposed to just having them choose from pictures of clocks or pictures of quadratic functions. So those 60 types of questions, while it is very exciting to have so much choice and to be able to build so much, it can be a lot. And so what we do is we break it down into subsections. You get to decide, how do you want to digest the question types? So there's, student action, there's subject, there's my favorites, test alignment. I prefer to look at the questions by student action. And I think, what do I want students to do? Do I want them to write something? Do I want them to graph something? Do I want them to do something with an image? And so underneath my main categories, I have some subcategories. So I can choose graphing, written, image, and then select from a filtered down list of questions. Now, even though there are 60 types of questions on Edcite, we use a consistent create question template. So you are always going to have your question name in the top left. You're always going to have what we call the pre-stimulus directions, or where you can say, like, please read the passage below and answer the questions. You've got an area on the left where you can put videos, audio, passages with numbers. And then on the right, you're going to have your questions. So this is the default view for every single question editor that you open. So what we're going to do now in the spirit of time is that I'm going to go through a few question types, and you can see them quickly be made just to show how question creation can be done on Edcite. So in this example, very quick typing, it is, I've copy and pasted an Alice in Wonderland text. I added some numbers to it, and I'm quickly typing in questions. Just like we were saying earlier, We wanted it to be easy so you can inline edit. You just click in and start typing. So I just click on the answer to set the answer. So we try to make this as simple as possible. So you might be thinking, oh, well, it's a multiple choice question. Of course it's simple. So I thought as our next example, and this might just be because I am an ELA teacher, I thought this next one was a more complicated question type. So let's say I want them doing something with quadratic functions. You know, they're at home. I might want to give them some extra instruction. So I can embed a video. I can embed from my computer or search on YouTube. Khan Academy is a fantastic resource to use. So I could use the blue pencil. I could embed a video, and we'll let this GIF run through a couple times so you can see this. So I click on that blue pencil, I add that video in there, and then I'm able to edit my question. I want to follow along with the GIF. Okay, so this is the editor. I'm going to add in that video. Yep, perfect. So I'm typing in quadratic functions. I'm searching on YouTube. I find the one I want. I add that. And then I go and I can customize the equation that I want students to use. I change my answer choice. And then this is the student view for you to check what it looks like. So if a student answered that, they would get immediate feedback and you would have auto grading. So again, you can always return to these slides and watch them for a slower roll, but we're trying to go through these pretty quickly. And then, you know, those are two extremes. So we've got multiple choice all the way to graphing. There's also a wide range of question types in between, especially for math in terms of keypads, those graphing calculator style questions. Definitely check them out. And then just because we're talking about Achieve the Core, I thought I would demo using the academic word finder from Achieve the Core to build a word search. So I was toggling back and forth, grabbing words from the academic word finder on Achieve the Core. And then I built my lovely word search. So you can build crossword puzzles, you can build word searches. There's a whole section of games that you might want to check out. So again, 60 types of questions, you've got a lot to choose from. And so my assistant principal always told me, go slow to go fast. So start with what's there and then dabble in more and more question types. Now, with every question you create, just one final note, I recommend tagging it to a standard. You can also tag it to depth of knowledge, and you can tag it at the part level. So if you make a part A, part B question, you can make part A about the theme and part B about the evidence. So you can separate those tags, which really helps make your reports on the back end extra useful. So we've got tagging. And then once I've built my questions, they live in my questions. I checkbox the ones I want, and then I can assign them to bring them into the assignment editor. From there, I can name my assignment, I can make it active, and I can push that out to my students. So again, my questions, I get the questions I want, I can assign it, which will scoop them into an assignment editor where I can name it, make it active, and push it out to my students. And just one note, again, because we're talking about remote learning, there are some special settings that I would recommend if you're looking to make this even more formative. So by default, students are getting immediate feedback and they are seeing scores when they submit. By default, students are also able to do retakes if they want to increase their score. You will always see their first score on the reports, and you can choose to see additional retakes. You'll have an option in your reports to say, show retakes. But if, let's say, I want to make it even more formative than giving the feedback at the end, I can turn on the ability to check answers after each question. So when I'm looking at the student view in terms of my edit assignment settings, if I turn on answer checks for each question, that means that students can answer question 1 and check whether they did that right before moving on to question 2. So if I've confused numerator and denominator, I'm going to get that immediate feedback at the beginning of the assignment, not have to wait until question 15 when I submit it and see, oh, that's what I messed up there. So if you want that immediate formative feedback, you can go ahead and turn on answer checks after each question, which, right now you're not able to walk around the classroom and check box and, look at different pieces of work happening at the desks. So this is a good way to make sure students are still getting quick feedback as they're working. And so just final thoughts on how, you can help your colleagues. I would definitely leverage the collections. So Claire shared that some of the core advocates have shared content on Edcite. They have built collections. I recommend that you do the same. Go into Edcite. You can build a collection. You can add assignments that you're creating or assignments from the library that you really like. And build that to be your unit plan. For here is our next 6 weeks of digital practice, maybe 5 questions a day. We've got, 30 of them ready. And then I can use that bulk scheduler. And one thing, so once I've got them all in there, I've got my collection created, I can also share that collection with my colleagues. So this is a great thing to put out onto Twitter, put out into your email group of, hey, I just made this collection. I think you guys can all use it. Just bulk schedule it. This is one high quality, standards aligned assignment a day for the next 6 weeks. And then you've got a nice baseline and you can plan on top of that. So those are the collections. And at this point, we're going to transition. I recognize that we went through a lot of information. And so definitely, if you are just getting started, start with those mini assessments. Just assign those, get used to the data, and then dabble in the existing content. And once you're ready, dive into those question types and start building. So Brian, I might turn it over to you and Claire, because you guys have been hanging out in the question and answer, and see what we can clarify for people.
Sure, thanks, and great job talking through a lot of wonderful content. So a lot of the questions that we were seeing were actually around. So one of them was, is it okay to share this webinar? So Claire, do you want to speak to that really quickly, just to get the word out?
Yes, thank you for raising that one. Please do share this webinar. I feel like Julie has done a really great job of walking you through Edcite. And then you have the information on the mini assessments, which if you aren't ready to go fully digital yet, are still available to be assigned just paper and pencil PDF format. So please do share this with anyone who you think this will be interesting and applicable to. So you had the registration link that you originally signed up with. You can share that old link with people. They can continue to sign up. It's just now they won't be live anymore. They'll just immediately access the video recorded version. So you can continue to share that same link with folks.
Wonderful, thank you. The next kind of set of questions that I'm seeing here are around Google Classroom. So it's a really popular tool for teachers, and with remote learning becoming more popular, a lot of people are leaning more on that tool. So the question was around, can I link Edcite with Google Classroom here? What does that look like? And what features are available? So I can answer that one. We have an integration with Google where any teacher can import their class directly from Google Classroom. You can import up to 10 classes. And when you do that, it creates student accounts on Edcite for all of the students in the class. So what that then means is you can assign to your Google Classroom from Edcite So when you're assigning, you just select a class, click a checkbox to post in Google Classroom. That link gets posted in Google Classroom, and then students will be able to just click the link directly, and without even signing in, we'll do that in the background. They get signed directly into the proper Edcite account, and they can do the assignment. So that's a really nice thing that you can do with Google Classroom, and something that we added in the last year. If you use Google Classroom Gradebook, you can even push those scores from our grading page back to Google Classroom Gradebook. So that was a really good question around that. Let's see. The next set of questions, and Julia, maybe you can weigh in on this. I think there's a lot of people that are excited about what they're seeing, and they're asking, is this free? Is Edcite a free tool for people?
Yeah. So basically, we've got Edcite. Everything that I showed you today is free. And so we do have a paid platform that we use for schools and districts giving common assessments, and then there's just additional things for state alignment. Right now, it's an all hands on deck time. So if you find that there is something in the premium version that your team needs to effectively help kids this school year, you just email us and we're going to work with you. So everything I showed today is free. So like dive in there. And there are additional things that can help with implementation. So if let's say you need to add a co-teacher, if we need to dive into a bit more of the accommodations, we can definitely get some of those things turned on. Just reach out to us and we're going to make sure that everyone has the support they need for the rest of the school year. So so there is a free and there is additional stuff with the paid, but at this point, it's, we're all part of this larger educator community. So reach out if you're looking to use this with more capabilities. We'll sit down and we'll see what else. Let's turn more stuff on for you if that's going to be helpful. We also don't want to overwhelm people. So if you're coming just to look for an assignment for your class, we don't want to give you an admin account and all these extra things that will just distract you. So this email on the front, support@edcite.com. If you email that, and I'll just put this on a slide, but I'm putting it in the chat. My email is julia@edcite.com. If you email me or support@edcite.com, we can make sure you've got everything you need to help all of our kids right now. And moving forward, because this is free always. So everything I showed you is free and will always be free.
Yeah. And a couple other, thank you, Julia, a couple other questions. It's awesome to see some questions towards the end of the webinar, which is wonderful. Thank you guys for the energy on that. One of the questions is around, it's around how could I share content with other teachers in my district? So on the free version, you'll see an option to invite. You can email other teachers. You just enter their email on your My Assignments page, and you can invite them via email to your assignment. You can also share an assignment publicly. So if you share it to our assignment library, that's going to be out there for anyone to discover. And you can even use your district name if you want to share it that way. Edcite schools, as Julia mentioned, will give you a private way to share that. And if that's something that you need in the spring, just let us know.
Yeah, honestly, if there's anyone on here right now that you're like, you know what, our whole team needs, we need this right now, just reach out to us and we'll work with you to get that up and running. So Brian and I were both teachers, and we know you got to have you got to have the support. So we got your back.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see here. I think a couple other really good questions here. So one was, does Achieve the Core offers technology or STEAM-related assessments? It appears to be math and ELA based at a quick glance. Claire, do you want to hop on that one, or I can give an answer to that, I believe.
Yeah, I think I saw the answer you gave to that person who asked, and your answer is absolutely right. So I think this is why that partnership with Edcite is so valuable. So right now we just have math and ELA mini assessments. We do have some science, history, social studies content in the form of lessons or text sets elsewhere on the site. But if you're looking specifically for assignment assessments and digital assessments, then Achieve the Core doesn't have science-specific ones. But as you saw previewed today, there is a lot of standards-aligned content on Edcite that you can access if you're looking specifically for STEAM content.
And just going off of that, right, we love this partnership because we're not content experts and we like to partner with people who are. So Achieve the Core is excellent with the math and ELA stuff. And we're always looking for other partners that are willing to openly share content, right? Because we just want to get more good content into the hands of teachers. So if you know of other organizations for other subjects that are similar in quality to Achieve the Core and are really doing great work, feel free to let us know and we'll start that conversation. But we're really thankful that Achieve the Core is making these great mini assessments available to even more teachers, because I know I used them when I was in the classroom frequently.
Yeah, and one more thing I'll just add is that we know that a lot of time can be spent curating content, and that's why this partnership with Achieve the Core is so great, because they've got these mini assessments kind of in collections, so it is easy to push out on Edcite. Our team is going through a process of curating collections for math, science, social studies, and ELA. And so we're going to be publicizing more ready-to-go collections next week. So we'll be pushing those out. We'll add them to the resources next week for anyone who comes back in here, and we'll be pushing them out to our Edcite community and through social media. You guys are a great audience, so thanks for being here, and again, thanks for all that you're doing. So Claire, I don't know if you guys usually hang out a little longer to keep answering questions, or we should wrap
Yeah,
up.
I see we have a couple more questions. Folks can feel free to hop off. Before you do, though, I just wanted to share a plug for a survey. We're really trying to understand what the needs are currently in your district, in your school, what support you have from your district, what support you need from partners like us, from Achieve the Core and Edcite. So there's a link on this, and I'm sorry, I'm having trouble with my technology. So Julie, if you can advance that slide for me to show that link.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks. Excellent. It's also in your resource widget. There is a link to a quick survey you can take to tell us what's happening in your district. And so I saw we had a couple more questions come in. Folks can feel free to hop off. I don't know if Julie and Brian, you have time to answer a few more questions.
So just going off the ones that are more recent, in case people are still here. So can we turn on text-to-speech for math items? If text-to-speech is something that you're interested in, that's something that's part of our premium platform. So we can get you set up for that this spring. What we're working on for this summer, based on this request and hearing it from across the country, we know that this modification is often given at the assignment level. So it's not allowed for ELA, but it is allowed for math. We've even seen that in some states, there's this requirement that for ELA, it's allowed within the question area and the prompt, but not necessarily on the passage if you're assessing reading. So that's something that we're adding as a capability to our premium platform for the summer. But if you want text-to-speech for your students in this time right now, just reach out to us and let us know, and we'll get you set up with that. So you can turn it on at the assignment level. So you could turn it on for all your math assignments and then not turn it on for your English assignments.
And I think one other thing, like when thinking about math text-to-speech, in terms of like exponents and all of the symbols and things, the text-to-speech works totally fine on that. So it'll say like x to the power of 3 in its text-to-speech voice. So it works perfectly well with the math questions. And sometimes early elementary teachers like to have their own voice for some of the read aloud options. Every teacher, even on the free version, you have the capability to record your own voice, recording some audio. So you can embed audio into any question that you are creating. So that's also an option. But like Brian said, if you if your team is looking for that accommodation, because 100% we need to make sure students can access content at home. And if they need text to speech, we need to make sure that they can get it from Edcite. So reach out to us so we can get that set up for you.
All right, very good. So, wow, still more questions. This is awesome. Let's see. Yeah. How do we reach out? How do we reach out for the things we may need this spring? So I think, Julia, you were saying use support@edcite.com. Is that right?
Yeah, support@edcite.com is going to be great. Just to make sure, it's going to contact our entire team. Feel free to reach out to me directly. But sometimes, time zone lags, different things. I think it's always good to at least loop in support@edcite.com so we can make sure you're getting a very prompt response.
Yep. One other note here from Chantel is we were able to get Chromebooks to most students, but we do have some students without internet. And I don't know if you heard the piece about what Hoboken is doing, but that's a challenge across the country right now, and it's a reality. And kind of counterintuitively, as we were getting together as a leadership team at Edcite and talking about what are important features during this time, it's interesting, but we actually realize that printability can be huge in that space, right? It's better to have a student that can actually do an assignment on paper than a student who is home and not able to do any of the content. So that's something that we're focused on, helping people. If you need to print it out, Edcite assignments can be printed and saved as PDF and emailed as well. So that's an option for the students that are not able to connect, and that can be how Hoboken is supporting themselves in these next 3 weeks. They're using the paper packets while they're distributing the technology to get that out there.
Yeah, and I think I heard Spectrum is specifically offering free internet, but again, sometimes locally you might have other deals. It might vary by region. So there's a lot of companies out there right now trying to make sure kids are connected. And if you need any help, again, reach out to us, because we're hearing from a lot of our districts around the region which companies are being most helpful. So you can reach out to us and we can try to point you in the right direction.
All right. One question here. Let's see. I think I see a lot of these things where we can follow up individually, and we will make sure to follow up here. A lot of thank yous. Thank you, guys. Yeah, this looks like I think we've answered most of the ones.
I saw a question come into the group chat about English language learners. So another thing, if you need the capability for students to record audio in their answers, again, get in touch with us and we can turn that on. So that's also one of the additional pieces in the premium version, where you can have students answer with audio. So a lot of the English second language learners, their assessments require audio responses, and just, you want to hear speaking and listening skills. I saw someone in the group chat just said Comcast is offering free internet for students in Boston Public Schools. So if you're in Boston, check it out. All right.
All right. Well, I want to thank you guys. Thank you, everyone who stayed on after class. Thank you, Julia, Brian, for giving us your time tonight. This has been really helpful. I hope it's been helpful to all of you who joined us tonight. We recognize this is a really busy time. You have a lot of changing needs and a lot of competing priorities, and we really appreciate you giving us your time tonight to learn with us. So thank you so much, everyone. Have a good evening.
All right. Have a good one. Thanks so much, Claire.
Thanks, everybody. I'll hang out and type answers to some more questions in here. So thanks.